One look at Ensign Nathan Hill's chiseled jawline sent the Delax girl into a mating frenzy, her body shaking with a desperate need to pop his bones right there on the engineer deck of the U.S. Odyssey as Ensign Nathan Hill Jr. Security Officer was assigned to escort. A delegation of Takanu culture was touring the advanced human ship. He had no idea of the chaos that was about to erupt as he led a group of aliens through the glowing corridors and humming engine rooms. He noticed an attractive spa of Thalaxians staring at him and the elaborate text around them. Her gaze intensified as the tour continued after the other delegates filed in and Spike approached Nathan, her eyes wild and her skin flushed. Acknowledging that his mere sight had triggered her species' intermittent desire to mate into a fervent biological imperative that demanded satisfaction, Spa pleaded with the young officer to quell her frantic arousal, but Nathan was bound by Starfleet. Strictly against alien tourists and brothers' brotherhood and brother. Nathan's rejection. Only fanning the flames of Spa's lust, consumed by unsatisfied lust, the crazed Thalax stole a phaser from the armory and took his delegation hostage, vowing to execute them all unless the human contacted him immediately, facing diplomatic disaster and the threat of derailment. Humanity's budding alliance with the Tsian, the captain of the Odyssey, gave Nathan a shocking order. Do whatever it takes to defuse the situation and give Spike what she needs. When Nathan faces unstable women and pulls hostages, interstellar rules will be a curse. She will only become more and more of a barrier. Her body trembled with the increased urge to mate, and her Spike babbled of ancient Thalaxic prophecies, foretelling the arrival of star soldiers from the void of space superior beings, who would cause an uncontrollable desire to cross his women with the powerful aliens who looked upon him with feverish reverence. The breathless girl declares that humans are mythical creatures of legend, and she won't stop at Nathan's chair. Before the clash got any further out of hand, the ship's guards rushed in with guns drawn, watching the heavily armed men approach the panicked hot springs and unleash several wild phaser blasts, one of which exploded a large stream of plasma wires. The engineering deck fell into darkness, the emergency lights suddenly came on, and Nathan lunged forward in the chaos, knocking Spitz to the ground. He managed to pull the phaser away as they struggled on the deck, their bodies tangled and pinned under the virus man's spikes. She let out her first moan as the demands of mating consumed her completely. She gripped his uniform, wordlessly begging him to take her away and fill her aching emptiness. Nathan's had spun as the spa pressed against him, filled with an intoxicating cocktail of pheromones and primal desire, and her body shook with hot need. His last vestige of self-control was gone. He pressed his lips against hers, and the burning desire to kiss exploded inside her like a supernova. They tore at each other's clothes. Wild, creeping and groping, Nathan pinning Spitz to the cold metal of the engineer's deck, a stark contrast to their fevered skin. He thrust into her with an animalistic growl, her tight heat wrapping around him. Spica arched under him, her claws running along his back, and she squealed in delight. They moved together wildly, the air thick with the scent of sex and alien pheromones swirling around her. She screamed her pleasure as the orgasm ripped through her vagina, emptying seconds later with a deep, throaty moan. A terrifying chill crawled up Nathan's spine. What did he do? He stumbled to his feet and helped the shivering hydrotherapist cover himself, shame burning. His cheeks refused to meet her eyes as he led her and the trembling delegation back to their lodgings. Captain Hollow, Nathan, looked because he stood with her prepared rooms and twisted her feet painfully. "Gr. You understand how serious this is. Starfleet takes friendly relations with alien species very seriously," and Nathan swallowed the sandpaper down his throat and said, "Yes, ma'am, I don't know what happened to me." The captain sighed, sympathy glinting in his eyes. "The situation is extreme in hot spring biology. None of us expected something like this to happen. She folded her arms. But it can't happen again. I need you to act as her liaison for the rest of their visit. Keeping her stability while maintaining the distance in the next few days, Nathan and Spiked turned each other around and attracted them through a smooth gravity. Nathan lost the soft weight in an exotic mood, and the dizziness and vigilant odor were often connected, and the water surface body was passionate. It's like a drug, a primitive addiction. Neither man can escape, but happily, the increasingly restless Nathan finds himself daydreaming about thoughts of duty, consumed by emerald green skin and snake-like eyes, and when the spa smiles at him, he tightens. Will true affection develop into true feelings for each other? It was all so wrong, but it felt so right. A tight knot of horror formed in Nathan's gut as the ship's doctor summoned him to the spy's hospital. He lay on the bed, wide-eyed and scared. The doctor's face was very gloomy, as were her pregnancy and fetus. It does not develop at ordinary science speed. It's growing fast, too fast. Ice flooded Nathan's veins, and a baby, half human, was incubated in an alien womb. He was dizzy, and his mouth was dry. It can't happen. Whispers run through the relaxed delegation like wildfire. They looked at Nathan differently now, reverent, truly lustful. He heard snippets of their mumbled conversation, the prophecy of the Star Warrior's holy seed, their eyes following him hungrily, appraising the other Terrasian women as they watched him. Like a wolf eyeing a juicy steak, he felt like a prize stallion brought out to show his potential, and with extracts from the captain's log for all to see, we held a senior staff meeting to see how the problematic situation should be handled. Ensign Hill did intervene. At present, Chin says the pregnancy is progressing at an alarming rate. Due to the mixture of human and Talaxian DNA, the delegation is in an uproar. Their ambassador demands that Spica be immediately culturally tainted and returned to their homeworld. He said it was disgusting, but Spica refused to accept it. She wants to continue her adventures with Un-san and wonders if she should lock him in the dorm or give him a medal. What a mess. A loud proximity warning beep snapped Nathan out of his reverie. He lunged at the belly of the bridge, smashing the image on the console. A huge Sien battlecruiser hung in front of them. Several guns were aimed at Odysseus. The gray face was full of disgust. The commander's eyes bore into Nathan's voice. You have destroyed our sacred prophecies with your alien seeds, humans. He bared his sharp teeth and gripped her swollen stomach as she prepared to scrub the spa, a horrified moan escaping her lips. Nathan stood frozen in the faces of his crew members. Turning to him, it was bad. This was very, very bad. The massive Scion battlecruiser appeared before the Odyssey's weapon ports glowed with deadly energy. Nathan's stomach dropped as a gruff voice boomed over the communications. This is the commander of the Xander. You will perform for DY Saint's forecast. I'm afraid I won't be able to. Commander Enon Mountain is under the protection of Starfleet. A flash of light filled the bridge as Xander and his soldiers, the materialized phasers, drew the commander's eyes, which were connected to Nathan, and it was full of disgust. UZAR snarled, advancing on Nathan. You will face high justice for your crimes. Captain Holloway stepped between them, taking command. As the tension builds, you have no authority here. A piercing cry rang out. Nathan whirled to see Spica collapse on the deck, clutching her swollen belly. The baby, she wailed, it's coming. Chaos erupted. A group of Talaxian soldiers broke ranks, rushing toward Nathan Seiss, the chosen one. One shouted that he must fulfill the prophecy. Phaser fire erupted as Starfleet security engaged. The rogue T-Axians Xander bellowed orders to his loyal troops who joined the fray. Nathan ignored the firefight, sprinting to Spitz's side. She grabbed his hand, her face twisted in pain, and Nathan urged her to hold him. You can do this, and Nathan will feel a searing pain in his back. He cried out, his vision blurring as he slumped forward through the haze. He saw a tiny, scaled form emerge from the spa. "Our baby," Nathan gasped softly as he held the sliding hybrid baby spa. The distressed wail was the last sound he heard before. The darkness claimed he was Nathan, and a few days later, Nathan blinked awake in the infirmary with a splitting headache. The doctor's stern face mirrored what happened before him. "Nathan, where's Spica?" "Honey, I'm sorry," and the doctor said softly. "After we subdued the bandits, Commander Sanders' troops retreated with them, and they disappeared. While they praise him as a hero, their praise rings hollow." He threw himself into studying Thalaxic lore, searching for answers late one night when a passage caught his eye. The union of star warriors and chosen vessels must usher in a new dawn for our people. His son Nathan must find Spa and their child. The Xian's fate may have depended on it, but Captain Holloway refused requests to hunt them down. It was too dangerous. He saw his ability to fly through control. He triggered a cascade failure in the craft systems on Mayday. He called to the Odyssey controls, who weren't responding as the ship's tractor beam reached for him. Nathan punched, the thrusters to maximum, and the skiff shot away from the Odyssey, racing toward science space. Alarms blared. As the Odyssey detected his deception, Nathan gritted his teeth, pushing the engines harder. He had to find Spica and their child, no matter the consequences. Nathan's hands flew over, the scout ship's controls hearts pounding as he pushed the engines. Crossing the red line, the Odyssey, looming large on his rear sensors, quickly closed the distance to Ensign Mountain's power and immediately returned to the ship, Captain Holloway's voice ringing out in. "This is your final warning." Nathan grits his teeth and cuts through the channel, thrusting his engines to the max, the scout ship shuddering and threatening to tear apart, but he can't give up when Spica and their baby need him. An alarm sounded, and Nathan's eyes widened as he saw a dense asteroid field ahead. It's crazy to try to navigate at this speed, but he has no choice. When he weans between the huge space behind him, he screams at the rock maze sensor and screams to approach the anxiety. The Odyssey slowed to a stop at the edge of the field. Nathan allowed himself a small smile of triumph as he activated the secret systems. His sensor signal was fading, and the hours of asteroid background noise passed as Nathan searched for any sign of a Thalaxian ship, his fingers clenching at the controls and his eyes burning at the readings, just as desperation began to take a faint turn. A signature that appeared at the edge of sensor range told you. Nathan muttered and adjusted course to pick up the scout ship's sensors. A warning sounded. A massive dark nebula of dust was right between him and the Thalax ship. Entering it would be suicidal, but walking around would waste precious time. Nathan took a deep breath and plunged into the darkness, alarms blaring as exotic particles bombarded the hull and stripped away the ablative armor. The ship pitched and rolled and threatened to break apart. The ship was able to travel safely, but he exploded on the other side. The hull integrity was critical, but the systems were still online, and the massive cruiser Tsian filled his screen. They spotted him and immediately fired jammer fire, narrowly missing the nimble scout ship, and Nathan ducked under the cruiser's hull, using its wake to mask his approach in a silent prayer. Nathan activated the ejection system. He is thrown into space as his ship disintegrates behind him. The explosion obscured his trajectory, and his suit's thruster pack fired, directing him to the airlock at the bottom of the cruiser. The impact knocked the wind out of his lungs, the airlock depressurized, and Nathan tumbled in, alarms blaring. He dashed down the hall to the surprise and amazement of Xian's staff, his phaser Nathan's heart pounding as he approached the spa's dormitory. He rounded the last corner and froze in the commander, Xander. Standing there were armed guards behind his back, spiking, hugging behind them, and grabbing a small bundle on his chest. So Xander snowed on the Prophecy Return catalyst. He raised his gun and aimed it directly at Nathan's chest. Now be human, or watch your maid and spawn die before your eyes and Nathan's mind. He was smaller and smaller, but Spica and their child were so close. He must find a way to save them no matter the cost, and Nathan has his sights set on Xander. The rag-scarred face of the Talaxian commander clutched their child, her eyes wide with fear as she pleaded with Nathan. Please go. Save yourself. I will not leave you. Your rebellion ends now, man. At that moment, Nathan saw his mistake. He charged forward and used all his strength to deal with Xander. They crashed onto the deck and fought furiously, with Nathan's fist connecting with Xander's jaw, but the Talaxic's superior strength quickly turned the tide. Xander slammed Nathan to the floor. Nail him. You dare to put my hand down. He roared and spoke to get a beautiful dagger. Nathan struggled, but Xander's weight crushed him. The blade glinted as it fell toward his throat. Suddenly, a bright flash of light erupted from Spa's hands, and their child, only a few hours old, began to glow in another world. Nathan watched in awe as the baby's body pulsed with energy. A shockwave of force exploded outwards, sending his soldiers backwards and crashing into the bulkhead, alarms blaring, the ship's artificial gravity swinging wildly, and Nathan stood up. They grabbed the glowing nannies and rushed from the room, down the winding corridors behind them. Angry shouts and heavy footsteps echoed in Nathan's mind, and he ran quickly, panting, looking for a way off the bridge. If we could get into the main controls, Spike nodded, her face pale but determined as they ran. Nathan felt a strange tingling sensation, with the child crunching in his arms and tendrils of light reaching out to touch the control panel next to him. Suddenly, the blast door closed behind them. Blocking the pursuers, it took control of the ship and Nathan's airway. They came to the bridge and concluded that it was welcome to the captain's chair, where it was given, and a pleasant hand was addressed to control the pulsation. Can you cook a whisper? Can you let us leave here? The baby's eyes are glowing, and a large number of cruisers buzzed on the screen. A vortex of dark energy is faintly visible, and the nebula tip is breathless. We can never survive. We have to try what Nathan calls planning a desperate route. This is our only chance. The ship pitched forward into the billowing darkness, its hull groaning under pressure and alarms screeching. Suddenly, the door burst open, and Shandar rushed in with a bloodied face and angry eyes. You won't be able to escape. Nathan faced the charging Talaxians, their bodies clashing in a frantic fight. They hit the consoles and took vicious hits. Nathan felt his strength drain as Xander's arms closed around his neck through the dark vision. He saw Spa holding their baby at the helm. The baby's glow grew more intense, filling the bridge with burning light, and the ship shook violently as they entered Nebula's grasp. Now the small pins throw tears in the face and give everything you have in your baby's eyes, and you shine like a twin sun. It felt that the commitment of the universe around the universe was distorted because they would pierce the unknown. The child's light exacerbated to swim the bridge in the creeping pulse altar. The baby closed, and her voice, a small stolen horse point, gave you everything you had. Nathan's fingers flew over the steering wheel, controlling the sweat beading on his forehead. The ship violently shook the hull plate, screaming under the load. We lost structural integrity. He yelled over the piercing siren, the Spa meeting her baby's eyes, the drive on her face, and then we'd give it some more. She pressed her forehead against the baby and closed her eyes in concentration, an energy crackling in the air that made the hair on Nathan's arm stand up. He saw the form of a Spa in consciousness and obviously began to braid with the child's light. The engine of the ship was in the cocoon of the radiation energy. It's working, he shouted. We break free, enjoy a brief moment of glory, and victory seems within reach. The grip of the nebula weakened the power of the stars, and then, without warning, a violent shock wave tore the ship apart, and Nathan did not cry at the helm. As the warp line became unstable, controls failed, sirens screamed, and antibody containment failed. Several explosions failed, the cruiser shaking harder than the last as Nathan fell from his seat and crashed into the bulkhead, his eyes wandering as he saw the child Spica being thrown over the bridge. The world dissolved into chaos, and searing plasma vented through ruptured conduits. The agonized screams of the Talaxian crew cut short as they were incinerated. As they tumbled through the mist-twisted space, the ship was torn apart, its hull panels sheared off, and Nathan drifted, the wreckage tossing in and out of consciousness. When he finally reached the bridge, undetectable spark wires hung from the ceiling, and the air was filled with acrid smoke. He stood up and winced at the pain coming from the speakers in his body. He shouted. He stumbled through the ruins. "Where are you?" At last, her crumpled body was revealed to be straining under the fallen support. He tossed the debris aside, and Spike lay still, her skin marred by ugly plasma burns. "No, no, no," Nathan mumbled desperately. "Check your vital signs." Her pulse was weak and racing, and the rapid movements caught his attention. Their child was sleeping in Spa's arms, but something was very wrong. The baby had aged several decades in an instant and was now a frail, withered body, almost lifeless. Nathan watched in horror as the child's eyes widened, a skeletal hand flashed open, exerting fantastic strength to grasp his wrist, and he spoke in an ancient voice full of indescribable wisdom and sadness. "The path is clouded, but you must persevere." This is exactly how Nathan can respond to the previous fight with deviations. The child's eyes rolled back, the body collapsed, and the ash slid over the fingers like sand. He turned back to the spa, desperate to save her, but her chest didn't move. Grief threatened to overwhelm him as a familiar hum filled the air, green as Odysseus' teleportation beam blocked Nathan, and he was even around. "Tis disaster." This blatant disobedience and dereliction of duty are completely inexcusable. She said her voice was cold, but now I need you to tell me what happened here. Nathan looked at his ashes to cover his hands and then moved to the spa. He met Holloway's eyes, looking sad, but took a determined breath. He begins to recount the nightmarish events that have taken place, as well as the terrifying prophecies that now link his fate to the impending alien apocalypse. Nathan stood among the wreckage of the Terrace Yen cruiser. Captain Holloway, his uniform tattered and stained with blood, watched the story unfold with piercing eyes. There was an old Tucker and prophecy that Nathan explained to his voice horse. It tells the story of the arrival of humans and how it will change their civilization forever. Our children. Holloway's eyes are the key. Nathan narrows his eyes and continues to describe the baby's extraordinary powers, how they control the ship's systems, and how they instantly age decades. The security team exchanged uneasy glances as he spoke. "I know how it sounds." Nathan said he was running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair but looked around. "The proof is here." Holloway investigated and found an unconscious man lying nearby, his skin burned to ashes. All the remains of their children were sitting on the deck. Her crew was still visibly shaking and nodding in agreement with what Nathan was saying, and those last words from Holloway emphasized the perversion, some kind of struggle, and violent tremors before Nathan could react by torturing Spa's body. Her limbs began to twitch, thrashing wildly against the spa. Nathan rushed to her side, crying, as paramedics swarmed around her, desperately trying to stabilize her. Nathan's face was full of despair. "We must let her go to Odyssey. When she weighs this decision, your disease bay is her only chance." That Holloway's face becomes difficult. After a long moment, she nodded. "I'm fine, but you know this mountain. When she stabilized, you two were arrested." There will be a court-martial for this disaster. Nathan sagged with relief as the transporter beam enveloped them aboard the Odyssey. Nathan paced outside, and Bay 2 security officers flanking him inside medical staff worked feverishly over SPA/S prone form. The chief medical officer barked orders as alarms blared, indicating her rapidly deteriorating condition. Suddenly, the ship-wide communication system came to life. According to Captain Holloway, we're detecting multiple warp signatures. The Terrasian fleet gathers at the edge of the nebula. The monitor flickered to reveal a gray face, his eyes flashing in a feverish light. I am Orthodox Archbishop Jared. You who have blasphemed our holy prophecy, he intoned, free him and his holy body at once or face me. Annihilation. Holloway stood straight, his voice steady. This is Captain Holloway from the Federation Starship Odyssey. We will not fulfill your request. Maybe we can discuss this prophecy of yours and come to a level of calm enough. Jared growled that your heretical presence is offending the very fabric of the universe, ready to be cleansed. The transmission cut off abruptly on the tactical display, and the Talaxian ships began to move into attack formation. As the standoff intensified, Nathan slipped away from his distracted guards. He crept into the bay, making his way to SPA's bedside, taking her hand in his. He leaned close. I'm here, Spica, he whispered. I will find a way to stop this perversion. Either way, I will not let our children's sacrifices be in vain. As if SPA's eyelids trembled and slowly opened to reveal his irises. The thing pulsed with an otherworldly light, the same ethereal light that emanated from their children's SPA eyes, which suddenly opened with an otherworldly glow. When Nathan's body rose from the biological bed suspended in the air, Nathan's heart beat violently. The medical equipment rumbled a rustling sound. Sparks flashed violently on the screen. Nathan's voice was hoarse. And what about you? Her head turned to hold him. Place. It shook the walls of sick bay, a distorted sound that stirred up sounds that had been dormant for an eternity. It wakes to the human touch of the stars, and Nathan leans against the wall, struggling to understand. What are you saying? What a debauchery to talk about our child, a being in spits, just the first birth pains, a new reality struggling to be born. As sudden arcs of energy shoot from the SPA coils, spinning through the equipment bed and bulkhead, Nathan, like superheated plasma, seeks cover through the deck. A beam exploded inches from his head. The deck shook violently as it leaned over. Nathan felt a sick and sudden decompression as the emergency force field came to life, trying to keep the atmosphere below. It's the voice of Captain Holloway, cutting through the chaos with security teams to eliminate the threat at all costs. Nathan crawled through the rubble, dodging falling debris. He had to get to SPA. He had to free her of whatever was on her. The security team burst through the door. The phasers were lowered. The chief officer screamed, and SPA's head was broken. She sent their bodies flying, collapsing against the far wall, and Nathan scrambled to his feet. They rushed to the exit, and the bulkhead door was sealed and closed, trapping them in the ruined infirmary. He found an extra control panel and typed furiously. His override code is coming. He grunted as his fingers flew across the interface, hissing with urgent force, and the field bubble suddenly came to life, filling the deck with breathable air, and Nathan, spinning back, floated at the center of the destruction, crackling with energy against her skin, her eyes locked onto his. She spoke in her own voice for a moment. You must see and understand that the way of humanity must be hidden, or depravity will consume all. He took a cautious step forward. Please tell me. Let me help you. Her eyes flashed no aliens, and the voice boomed again. The truth must be kept. The ship rocked violently, and Nathan was thrown off his feet as the horns blared. He watched in horror as the SPA's arms spread. Her fingers spread the full length of the computer system, flashing, displays coming to life, scrolling with rapid-fire commands and emergency saucer separation in progress. The computer announced Nathan, screaming that he was delayed with the spa, but the invisible force dropped him. The deck threw and rolled Nathan in a flawless, explosive screw sound that spread, shrank in the direction of the exit, and screamed in her communicator bridge. She separates the saucer section through viewport. He saw part of the Odyssey ride, and the spa's hand moved forward, and the huge part of the boat collapsed against the darkness of the kidneys. Forgive. This is the only end point of the bowl. Disc rotation causes artificial heaviness. Nathan stumbled towards the bulkhead as the emergency horn blared. Spica's eyes flashed with otherworldly strength. Spica stopped. He shouted, but his words were lost in the torn metal, and the screams of sirens were drowned out. The spacecraft's computer announced the emergency separation of the saucer in a calm, robotic voice. The entire drive section was now under autonomous control, crackling energy flashing across her fingertips and the screen on the control panel scrolling wildly. The deck pitched violently against the fog's toppled center as the drive section separated. He caught a glimpse of Captain Holloway through the observation window. With a look of anger and disbelief on her face, she gave orders to the crew. The drive section accelerated deep into the nebular tendrils of dark matter and struck the hull. Was an eerie sound like nails on metal, and Nathan's stomach twisted as the distortion of space warped his perception of reality. Suddenly, a series of plasma warheads streaked across, leaving burning streaks of light. The Thalaxian fleet had arrived, their ships filled with heretics in arms. Your hatred ends here. Another burst of incendiary bombs was fired at them, but the explosion was never seen. She opened her arms and unleashed a tremendous force. Twisted cells pulsated, a bright light tearing a corridor of sliding flux through the nebula's chaotic energy. The drifting part shuddered violently as it fell into the crevasse, and Nathan felt his body being stretched and compressed by the immense gravity. As the pressure rises and blood pours from the nose, they end up in a nightmarish tomb of broken blood vessels. The ghostly hulls of ancient ships drifted past in shapes impossible to the cruel physics of the nebula. Nathan stared at the sight as his mind struggled to grasp the alien geometry surrounding them, his spa eyes darting back and forth, scanning the cosmic debris field, and his fingers twitching. Making minor adjustments to your course. She seemed to be searching for something driven by an indescribable instinct. The Talaxian warships pursued them relentlessly. Their weapons were almost stopped by sparse, weakened shields. You cannot avoid judgment. The prophecy will come true. A final wave of hellfire torpedoes is fired from the Terrasian spaceship. Flashing with interdimensional energy, the projectiles slid past the spa's defenses and struck the lobby of the drive section. He felt the sickening blast of decompression as the entire section was blown away, the emergency field erupting into life, barely able to contain the atmosphere. Spa's face was contorted by a primal scream. She held out her hands. Reality itself seemed to tear apart before them, revealing a vast abyss of absolute nothingness. The pilot part fell into the void, leaving a howling Scion behind, and he felt himself being dismantled at the atomic level as his body was subjected to forces beyond human understanding, where only the power of the spaceship could hold him. In total, they entered a vortex of pure energy, a vortex of cosmic power that stretched as far as the naked eye could see. The spa movement has become smoother than it was when she was closely linked to this strange field. She whispered her voice and strangely repeated our voice, and we exceeded the boundaries of the universe. Now Nathan could only watch in awe as Spa guided their battered vessel through the maelstrom ahead. A fractured planetoid loomed, its surface dotted with crumbling structures of alien design as they entered the planet's turbulent atmosphere. The integrity of the last drive section failed, and Nathan felt a wave of weightlessness as the ship disintegrated around them. Then they hurtled into the scarred landscape below in superheated air, and he hit the ground hard. As Nathan's vision returned to normal, the shock knocked the air out of his lungs, and Nathan became scattered. In the ruins of an ancient alien city, Spike lay nearby, her eyes closed and her body still crackling with residual energy. Nathan struggled to her feet and looked around at their foreign surroundings and the incredible metal in the sky. He stumbled towards the Spike, fighting waves of nausea and disorientation as he reached for her. Her eyes opened, filled with an alien intelligence that chilled him to the core. "We have arrived." Her voice is filled with cosmic power. Now the real test begins. Nathan crashes onto the deck of the Odyssey's saucer section, pain racking his body, the pungent smell of burnt chains filling his nostrils, and emergency sirens wailing. He blinked in disorientation as a face came into focus above him. "Dr. Cannon, are you okay?" A young one helped him sit up. Nathan's head spun as he took in the chaos around him as the crew members rushed back and forth with injuries and damaged systems through a nearby view. He gleamed at the winding ruins of the alien world that went back to the spacing spa. He mumbled his voice as Captain Holloway pushed him through the crowd, her uniform singed and her face covered in soot. Something happened to the drive section, and Nathan struggled to his feet and leaned against the bulkhead to support the broken SCAC. She sacrificed herself to save everyone. Hollow eyes expanded. "What do you mean?" before Nathan answers. A violent impact rocked the ship. Red alarm sirens sounded. The deck swayed under their feet. The captain reached the bridge. A voice sounded in the calibration system, and Holloway grabbed Nathan's hand and followed me. "I need an answer." They threw the bridge over the terrible scenes shown on the main stage. The alien world collapsed in reality because the universe's energy tore the scientific official, Holloway, through the state report of the room. Her fingers flew over the console. "Captain, we are detecting massive quantum fluctuations, as if the fabric of space-time is unraveling around this planet." "It was a perversion," he whispered. "Spikes fights it." As Nathan tries to control what's going on as Holloway demands, Nathan turns on him, his eyes haunting the captain, and we stumble upon something bigger than ourselves, a cancer in Devour's reality. She herself, Spica, tried to consume it, but his voice was behind her. When he looked at the crew around the crew, he saw fear in their eyes and realized that they saw horrible, surpassed human understanding, boats, shocked again with a shockwave attack. Holloway held on to the console. "We cannot stay here," leading us to design a course from the system, the maximum scissors. As the Odyssey's engines roared to life, Nathan placed a hand on the captain's shoulder. "It is not enough," he said softly. "That perversion is already here in all of us, waiting to take root." Holloway met his gaze, her teeth clenched. "Then we fight it. Regardless, we didn't leave the stars stretched out in streaks of light when the Odyssey went awry, but even as they fled, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that they were carrying with them something that would change humanity forever." He closed his eyes. Spa's last fierce display of defiance burned into his memory. The battle for human souls has just begun. You have reached the end of your story. If you like this story and want to support us, please like and subscribe to our channel. For each comment, I will appreciate it. Thank you for your time.